So a vessel, it constitutes as a piece of paper. There's many forms of vessels. They can also be called a vassal with an A instead of an E. Now, one vessel is my vein, and the cargo is the blood. But there's many forms of vessel. So if we're looking at a paper world, which is a commercial world, and this world we live in is commerce, everything's filled in on a form or an application. And if it's not written down in this world, it doesn't exist. So we're going to look at a piece of paper being a vessel.
Okay.
Now, the cargo of this vessel is the words upon it. Now, people don't really look too much into the words of how they're actually created. And they're created by using something called parsing, syntax, grammar. So
okay.
if we look at PAR being part of the word part, and SE being of speech in Latin, then parse would mean parts of speech, wouldn't it?
Parse.
Now,
yeah.
Yeah. So if we look at syntax, syntax is where words come together and create a sentence structure. And then grammar, we don't have to explain that, we're quite sure. But we've got to look at how words are formed together by using parts of other words which become syllables. For example, if we looked at the word insurance, then everyone will be familiar with the word insurance.
Right.
So
it's gone mute again.
We lost him still.
I don't know if where you muted your mic on StreamYard or if you had it muted already. But
Sorry. Can you go back to that word in?
So the word in
sorry,
in a negative form.
My bad. That's my
fault.
Look
at the word
Sorry, brother. I had some personal stuff going on in the background. I muted myself. I ended up inadvertently muting you to the stream. So can you go back to insurance, please, and breaking that down, please? So totally my fault.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's 2 million words thereabouts just in English language.
Yeah.
Most people have 12,500 vocabulary.
Okay. What happened?
I think he might have got a call or something. The way he reached.
Might have got a call. All right, cool. When he comes back, I'm gonna try and I'm gonna try and convince him to go back to Andrew.
Yeah.
Sorry, please. No, someone called you.
Yeah.
Please, can you do me a big favor? Yeah. I know time is of the essence. Can you please go back into breaking down the word insurance? So we went from parse to talking about the syntaxes. You broke down a bit of grammar and stuff. Then you went into insurance. Can you go back to that? Because that's where I muted you, please.
Yeah. So if we look at the first syllable in the word insurance, then we'd be looking at the word in. Now, if we said 3 + 3 = 6, you'd say that that's correct. If we said 3 + 3 = 10, you'd say that that's incorrect.
Incorrect. Sure.
So the word in, therefore, has got a negative content.
Yeah.
So that means in its basic form, it's without or no, basically.
Can I give you an example? There's a young man on here that comes on here and says that he comes on here and he says that he is intelligent. He says he's intelligent. And he says to be intelligent is to be stupid. And he was laughed at until we kind of heard him out. So would you agree with him?
Well, we would, but we've got to look at tell, and we've got to look at I, because in the middle of a word, the letter I it's got a dot above it. In the start of a sentence, it's got no dot above it.
Right.
So if we look at it in that word, then tell, and then the I, which constitutes with the head on being a man, not the capital word, which is decapitated, and a person. Then and then it's got gent on end. So what that is in its parse, that is an incomplete sentence structure of 30%, and it would want correcting into its correct sentence structure.
Damn.
L-I gent, in order for it to mean what it really means. So that is the art of parse and syntax in its rawest form. It's really complicated. Not many people get it. Not many people are meant to get it.
Yeah.
And we're not saying we fully do, but we're gifted in many ways, just like all people on this planet Earth are. And grammar seems to be something that we've always played with since the age of about 11.
Right.
So moving on from the word in, which we've now put, we've got the word no underneath.
Okay.
We've now got to look at the next syllable, would be sur. Now, that would be part of the word surety.
Surety, yeah.
And if we look at ance, if we have that ance on the end of a word, it's a contract word. So what
Finance.
that means is no surety contract. And how can you have surety when we're saying that we're a name on a piece of paper birth certificate? So that's why it's a no surety contract. But that's just one word out of 2 million.
Yeah.
So if we look at the vessel and the cargo of words being upon it, well, in our manner, we use a correct sentence structure of using 100% English language, which we believe has not been done before, because people are normally taught about, well, it's normally about 15 to 20% of language at school. So because we understand each other by hearing each other, we think we're speaking a full language. But there's many interpretations with each other within that due to this lack of incomplete sentence structures. And you can change an entire direction with just by removing words or adding words. So, for example, if we said that I will go to the shop, then we've got a position, a location, and a direction. If we took some words out of that from I will go to the shop, and if we took some words out and just add go shop, well, we've now changed the position, the location, and the direction. So by us correcting our language and also adding the dictionary what we use to remove any controversy of interpretation, then that means that whatever cargo of words is on our document means one thing, and there's no controversy within it. So we disclose the dictionary of use for our cargo, but ultimately we're still talking about this vessel being now a vessel with cargo upon it.
Okay.
And this is how our ID will start. So once we've got a vessel which is got cargo upon it, and everything's commerce in this world, would we not agree? So what we've got to do now is we've got to make that vessel with cargo on it become goods. So them goods now, because we've added a value to it of a postal stamp, which is currency, yeah? So it's a currency in itself, but because postal jurisdiction is above statutory jurisdiction, then if we use postal mechanics on his document, it far supersedes statutory law.
Let me pause you there. Let me pause you there, just so that we can catch up. I don't want you to lose. Is there anybody that feels they got any pertinent questions about the last few sentences he said? Any questions that you want clarification on? So we're not just nodding our heads like Churchill dogs. Anybody? I'm hoping S or T has got either a question or a clarification for us layman.
To be fair, I think that part there was pretty basic. Like he broke it down really well. So there's not too much to clarify there on my part.
Okay. S, are you there with us?
What he's getting into now with this whole stamp thing, I'll definitely have some questions about. So
okay, cool. All right, please continue, brother.
It's if we could possibly try to stop his train of thought as well, Jedi. I don't mean that in a bad way.
No. Sorry, I understand, man. My bad.
So ultimately,
see, the reason why I'm doing that is because I definitely want to make sure that both me and the viewers are taking on board the information and learning, because you know, rather than it just being them just sitting there and being like, because I'm seeing a few people look a bit confused in the chat. They don't really understand. They turn into each other for banter, for comfort, because they're feeling like they can't see the clothes the Emperor's wearing. So I'm trying to slow it down for them. But yeah, please continue, brother. My bad. I'll work better with you.
No, that's fine, mate. No, I appreciate your audience and your thoughts towards your audience as well, Jedi. So that's good, really, man.
Wow.
Ultimately, we've got to look in this world. Everything's commerce. We cannot work without becoming a name on a piece of paper. So everything's on paper, and that means that we have to be no different, because in a fiction world, which is a commerce world, you cannot have fact. How can you have a fact in a fiction world, and how can you have a fiction in a fact world? So I would explain that is if we were a yacht master in ocean, we wouldn't see land. We would sight it because it's fact. Now, if we were walking down the street, Jedi, and you were a police constable, I'm sure people are laughing if we said that, but if you were a police constable walking down the street and you came up to us saying you just wanted to ask us a few questions, then what we've got to look at is, you are not being yourself as a man anymore. You've come out of that. So instead of being Johnny Depp, Jedi, you've now come out of that, and you've now become Captain Jack Sparrow, a police constable.
Yeah, I'm acting as the officer. Yeah.
Well, the difference between officer and constable to start.
Oh, well, yeah.
So now while you're acting as that, if you're acting as something, that means that you're no longer a fact. You're no longer being yourself. You know, Captain Jack Sparrow's not Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
You know, Elizabeth Alexander Mary is not Queen Elizabeth II, is it?
Okay.
So do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when we understand in this world that there's two of everything, Jedi, you don't get left without right, you don't get up without down, you don't get plus without minus, and you don't get... you see, as a judge, Jedi, one of the first things you'd learn as a judge is that no fact or law shall ever be tried in court. How could you ever admit a fact to court? You can't. How can you ever try a fact? And when people understand what LAW law means, then how could you ever try a law? Because what law means is, it means that we've agreed upon it. So unless we've agreed upon it, there is no law. So, for example, with our Book of Deeds, which is similar to Birth, Death, Marriages Registrar, but as it identifies people as people and not a person or corporation, then we've got witnesses, thumbprints, and it's in a total different capacity to what these people are doing. But we can't be you as that police constable walking down the street acting as something you're not, cannot cite this fact as a man, or you couldn't cite that fact as a woman if it were Andrea in the same manner. So what you could do is, though, you could see a card like a driving license or something which is of a likeness to this fact, but you can't see this fact because you're a fiction. You could only see something of fiction of equal manner and capacity. So this is why we have to get an identity like a card, a driving license, passport and things, because it's only of a likeness to us. And the words that we speak, no one even discloses whether they're speaking uppercase hieroglyphic symbolic text, capitalized words, or lowercase English words. And one's a descriptive, one's an illustrative. No one uses punctuation. If we said, what's your name? And you said Jedi, then we've got to look at the three words, what's your name? If we changed it to Jedi is your name, Andrew's your name, what's your name? We've just called you what? So if we said, what's your name, full stop, statement. If we said, what's your name, question mark, we're no different. But there's that many interpretations between spoken language that there is no oral interpretation. So ultimately, between you walking down the street, why, as a constable, why could you not cite this fact, Jedi? Is it because you can only see something fictional, which is of a likeness to this fact? So you can't have a fact in a fiction world. And a fiction world is everything we see because everything's commerce. So we, after, as man and woman, we decided that once we, after 24 years, we worked out these dates and scanned between 3 birth certificates. We decided that if they can't cite this fact, then we'll give them something they can see, and this will identify us as a man or a woman, and we will now be not of an equal capacity to these. We will be outside the jurisdiction of these, and we will be inalienable, non-contractable assets. So we've had a barrister take our IDs down to Border Force, and they've been passed back to her after 3 hours 50 questioning, because quite clearly there's no wrong with them, Jedi.
Yeah.
But ultimately moving on from this vessel of cargo becoming now goods, Well, we've got to look at significance of what governs goods and what governs vessels and what also governs movement of. So there's something called Department of Transport, DOT. DOT governs all vessels. But what governs the movement?
Did you say the Department of Transport? Did you say, yeah?
Yeah, that governs all vessels.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, what's higher and above that is the Universal Postal Union, UPU. That was created in 1871. There's 192, or I think 194 countries within it now in its treaty. First one was Hawaii, 1891, I think it was. It took 3 days for contract from Hawaii to get to Bern in Switzerland. Obviously, they used steam on boats back in that time. So this is where 3-day rule comes in, that there's no contract life for 3 days.
Okay.
There's also 1891 Stamp Act. But if the Department of Transport governs all vessels and the Universal Postal Union governs all movement of vessels, then by us putting goods and Universal Postal Union fees upon our vessel of cargo, then that puts it in not the statutory jurisdiction, it puts it in a postal jurisdiction. So, for example, we postal mechanics on his documents, if we submit our postal mechanic document to a court, then what that means is we can call a postmaster that obviously we bought them stamps from to come into dock and to declare 1891 Postal Act, and because it is above statutory law and these in statutory are below it. So he'd now dictate exactly what this meant and everything and judge at court on that day, wouldn't they, in that manner? So postal mechanics are of real significance. Now, once we've put as vessel with cargo and turned it into goods, well, we now need to pay a fee for them goods to be transported on the postal roads and shipping lanes. So they're not highways, they're not roads, they are postal roads and they are shipping lanes. And unless anyone can prove different, then that's what they're going to be constituting as. But in a fiction world, if you can't have a fact, then they have to change that fact into that what it's not by motion of words. So, for example, you can't admit man into court, but you can admit person. You can't admit soil into court, but you can admit land. You can't. Do you see what I'm saying? Earth. So by now, the motion of words and motion that's given in it is because ultimately this is talking about grammar, fraudulent misuse of grammar, and that is because people are taught to speak adverb, verb, adjective, and pronoun. Now, if we look at just for example, barristers, see as a judge will tell barristers that if you were our audience of barristers now, and we said to you prior to you entering our court that no fact or law shall ever be tried in our court. Do you understand? Well, you've got to think, if no fact or law can ever be tried in a court, then what can be tried, Jedi? A lie.
Lies. Okay.
So if they've got to modify that fact into that what it's not by motion of words, then it's the judges pass motion, don't they? So barristers are taught to speak only adverb and verb sentence structure. A verb is a thought, you can't hold it in your hand. And an adverb is what gives motion or speed to that verb. So if we looked at verb, say, run, then we could modify it with an adverb by saying slowly run or quickly run. Right. So we're putting speed and motion to it, aren't we?
Yeah.
So what one's...
Or run up, run down is a direction you put into it as well. Yeah, it makes sense.
So once we understand that we've got to look at the special delivery barcode. You see did you see it's blue? It's not orange, it's blue.
It's blue, yeah? The barcode is blue. The ink you're using is blue.
The ink we use is dark blue. But
just like when you go post office.
Red and blue.
Okay.
I mean, this is obviously a vessel, just like a driving license, and it can't speak for itself, Jedi.
Yeah.
So we can't put fact. We can put factables behind it and things, and separate them to entities. But for example, we couldn't write in purple because purple is both red and blue, and it constitutes as both being bonded and bifurcated together and encumbered again. So it's like a royal mark, ultimately gold mark sovereign. many different colours, and we're not really talking about colours in this manner. It's mostly about what the importance of postage and things like that. The grammar upon it, if what you see, the grammar upon it, people don't have to think, oh, I can't uphold that. It can't speak for itself. I don't have to learn all that. No, we've took all that out here. We give a guidance sheet of an A4 sheet. Let's just give you an example, Jedi, again. You're that constable, you're talking to us at side at road or in a private conveyance, a car. And while you're speaking, I don't know if you're speaking uppercase words that don't exist in an English dictionary and therefore cannot be English and must be foreign. So if you're not giving a disclosure as to what the definitions are, we can't understand what it means. You may as well be speaking fucking French. So because we've got that understanding of that, and we don't know whether you're speaking uppercase words or lowercase words, and we don't know if you're using Oxford English Dictionary or Oxford Australian Dictionary, for example. Right. I'm trying to make it really simple. Yeah. There's thousands out there, right? So there's no subjective interpretation to anything what would be coming out your mouth as that constable, is there?
No.
So remedy in that manner, if we've got an idea and we've got a dictionary enclosed, and this only means one thing, then our remedy to every question asked until we learn stuff is everything's in his paperwork, full stop. And it really, really, really is. Because you've got to put words in a certain structure. For example, if his parents' last will and testament was to birth us, and birth means a stillbirth, so that means the deceased is on that day, then how could we ever write another will or testament if we're a deceased estate? Now, in court as a judge, when you apply for life, if you made a plea to us, Jedi, we'd be summoning you 90 days later, and on first day, we'd be applying for a birth certificate in your name because it's watermarked, it's currency, it's propped up, obviously, by banks. If we look at a bank, it allows the rivers to flow and the currency to flow within it. Then the currency flows not only by depositing onto banks, but it also withdraws. So as a judge, we're going to get this watermark birth certificate that's got no likeness upon it, and everybody can be the crown. And now what we're going to attach to that, because it's a deceased estate, just a name upon it, John Smith or whatever, well, we're going to apply for something what's called a Form 206 from High Court. That gets attached to it, and a Form 206 gives temporary life to an estate for a 24-hour period, but usually for time at court. This is where people are all rise, and then at end all rise, because you've got to put that energy into estate to facilitate it. It's business. Okay. Once we explain birth certificate fraud, which we'll do it as speech and stuff, you'll understand more this. So, yeah, it's going to time out, Andreas says, so it should just be clicking to another.
Yeah, clicking to another one. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was a good place to recalibrate. Now, I've got some panelists on there. Esther, you there, brother? I'll try.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, my daughter called me the last time.
No problem. Big up daughter, man. She's more important. Is there anything you'd like to ask or get clarified you think that might benefit the trill for our understanding, or even for yours?
I didn't have any questions at this point. What are the two statements I wanted to make? One is that obviously Andy's trying to make it as simple as possible, but it's like each of the concepts he mentions could have a whole book written on it itself, just for you to like take the time, the weeks, the months, the years to actually gain, I'm going to use the word Andy used, an understanding of the reality of it. The other thing I was going to say was Andy mentioned that creating the documents he's got in such a way so that there's no controversy. I wanted to add to that for those who might be wondering what that means. The way he's written it means it's not open to interpretation. It is what it is.
Fact.
And once we add his thumbprints to it and agree upon it, then that becomes the law in that manner. And we've all agreed to principles within it and the constitution of our Book of Deeds, which is written such things like we're not going to cause harm, injury, loss or fraud upon another.
Just for some people that might not know, would you clarify the difference between like person, obviously coming from persona, and man, woman type thing? Because I think a lot of people might not, they refer to themselves as persons and stuff like that. And I see you're very careful with your words just from using stuff like understanding, so it might be good for them.
Right. Well, one of the biggest trick in this system is the word "you," because there's 7 ways to spell it. Now, if we can look at YEW, tree in Garden of Eden. We can look at YOU. We can look at letter U. We can also look at another one. It's called HUE. It's the color blue. Right. So it's the color blue. So if we add HU before the word man, we're now coloring the man.
Why is hue that word? Why is hue? I thought hue denoted color. Why is it specifically blue?
It's just what hue identifies as a light color blue. You know, when you look at definition of it.
Yeah.
So it's just the definition. It's just a light color blue. But the most important thing people are missing is, if we have man on its own, then man is man. Or if we have woman on their own, it's woman. But when we add a word before it, then that governs it. So if we're going to add HU before man, human, well, we've now just coloured it, haven't we? Because colour HUE, it's a colour. As much as it's light blue, it's a colour. So what that means is now we've changed that man, which is a fact. We've changed man into now a noun, but it's also coloured. So it's like an adjective. It's modified. So in the same way, we've got the word son, S-O-N, and if you add the word P-E-R to it, you've now modified that word son, and it's no longer a son, just like no longer a man when it's a human. And we've got to look at definitions of what human means. It's not just writing in an Oxford Styles English dictionary. We've got to look at various different jurisdictions around this world. And there's 194 of them to start with, because they're all different countries have got their own jurisdiction. They've got their own constitution. They have their own dictionaries, but they also have their own law dictionaries. They also have their own legal dictionaries. They also have... So unless someone's going to disclose dictionary, we cannot know what it means. If we looked in a Black's Law dictionary, I think it's edition 4. I think it's edition 4. It might be edition 6. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
I think it's edition 4, edition 6, page 584. It talks about a person. For example, we'll look at word human, and it'll tell you in its same dictionary to look at the word monster for definition. So you're looking at human, it says sea monster. So you flick through to back and you see monster, and for monster, it's talking about a person, a creature, but it also mentions a thing. People don't really understand this thing. We do explain it with birth certs, and we can say it basically now, but it's to do with ecclesiastical deed, which is in 1710, which is the third birth cert created, and ultimately is baptismal certificate. So in this country, if we were ever baptized and our mother and father passed our baptismal certificate to church, which is ultimate Vatican, well, ecclesiastical means one's S-O-U-L, soul. So they've just passed the soul to the Vatican from this body. And it's all bullshit on paper and that, we know. But that's what's happened. So if you take the soul out of something, it becomes like a cup or a table or a washing machine. It's got no energy of its own. Or even a piece of paper birth certificate, which can't speak or act for itself. So this is where the word thing ultimately comes from. And we will explain it more as it's taught.
Okay.
So going back to the remedy for us, if we ever ask questions, we put 3 in as guidance sheet, but ultimately everything's in as paperwork, full stop, because there's no subjective interpretation from spoken words in an oral manner from anyone else, such like a police officer or constable or judge or administrator or clerk of court or whatever. So in that manner, if there's a dictionary disclosed with ours and it means one thing, like that guy said, then our best remedy is for what's your name? Everything's in his paperwork, full stop. Where do you live? Well, we don't live, we exist because we're man, but everything's in his paperwork, full stop. What's your name? We're not one of a name because we are not a corporation or person. We have a given hearsay Christian calling, and nature calls. This is why we have a calling. Now, a name, we can jumble words up and get amen. We can jumble letters up and get main, which is what runs down back of an horse's neck. But what we've got to ultimately look at is even when we jumble it up to amen, well, just like the word in means no, when we add a vowel before a word, that vowel makes that word negative context and mean no. So, for example, agent, an agent would be no gentleman. So if an MI6 agent jumped out on us when we were walking with Mrs. and when we were ignorant of fact of the subconscious and the conscious, and subconscious only ever knowing fact, then when that MI6 agent jumped out on us on London Bridge, for example, then with his gun and his badge, then our subconscious wouldn't say anything to us because it only ever knows fact, and that man's not lied to us. But as conscious, well, we've all got a conscious, and that runs its own way through fear and intimidation and such things. So because we understand that, and someone says to us that, oh, I'm an agent, well, we know that the letter A on its own means no before a word, just like any vowel does. And that's made it become no gent, which ultimately means he's not a gentleman. So we're not going to trust this guy. We're not going to believe this guy. And do you see what I mean? There's so much complexity in grammar, and it's not just in one language either. This is the art of fraudulent misuse of grammar. So going back to his document, we're looking at that special delivery.
Just to make a quick point, this agent point that you're making reminds me of the term aboriginal. Now, being that I'm a personal trainer in fitness and stuff like that, I was always told that anything taken away from the body or from your medial line is abducted, absent, abstract. Yeah. So for someone to be an aboriginal, but then you're claiming that they are you're actually trying to say they're the original people. It doesn't make sense.
No, sub-original.
It was unoriginal.
Yeah.
It's not original. Yeah. It's away from the original. So an agent, it does make sense what you're saying.
Yeah, like atypical and words like that.
There's many. We don't want to get into complexity of parsing, syntax, grammar, and fraudulent misuse of it in that level. It's if we are doing that, ultimately it's better for visual effects on a board and things like that.
Yeah, of course. All right, don't worry, don't panic, guys. I've got the new link.
Yeah. Jeez,
I'm enjoying it, man.
You can tell Andrew's been doing this for a long time, boy.
Yeah, he's been doing it for 30 years.
He uses sight and see in the right place without even thinking about it.
Bro, so now I know a few people wanted to ask Andrew, when you say we, I'm going to ask him, but I'm sure by the time we've kind of finished speaking, we ain't really going to need the answer to that.